So, a common question we're usually asked is, should I accept a plea bargain or go to trial? Now, as the criminal defense attorney, obviously this is something that's dealt with commonly, where almost every case you're considering how things should play out. The number one thing to remember is it's always the client's choice, always the defendant's choice as to whether they go to trial or take a plea bargain. You don't have to do a plea bargain if you don't want to. Now, the real question becomes, is it wise or is it in your best interest to take a plea bargain? Now, obviously, that's something you should discuss with your attorney, but the main driving factor of that is how much risk are you willing to take and what are the circumstances you are in. The worse a case looks for a defendant or a client, the more likely you are to start looking at the possibility of a plea bargain. The more risk there is for a client if they go to trial and lose, the more likely you are going to want to consider a plea bargain. Oftentimes, people talk about plea bargains as if they're just an easy way to resolve a case. Sometimes that can be true, but the main driving factor should be, is it in the client's best interest to consider a plea bargain? Generally, plea bargains are going to be offered with a reduced sentence from what could happen at trial. And so that's really the biggest driving factor. If there's a risk of, for example, going to jail if you lose a trial, and there's an offer for a probation type of plea or avoiding any jail time, that becomes something that is sort of compelling. And so again, it needs to be discussed. If you have a very good chance at winning a trial, you're less likely to want a plea agreement, but you're also more likely to get a better offer. So it's always individualized. There is no catch-all here. Every case is its own case. But plea bargains are sort of an essential way that the system kind of manages itself because there's such a high volume of cases in the system. And almost always the prosecutor is willing to consider some offer that would satisfy them, that would satisfy everyone involved, and address the needs they think there are for a defendant or a person that's charged. So it's definitely something that should always be discussed with an attorney. I do have a blog on our site about the topic in particular, and it discusses the idea of an open plea versus a set term plea. So there are some more specifics there. But in general, a plea bargain is something that should always be discussed with an attorney. It's something that has to be discussed with the client once it's offered. So don't be shocked if an attorney talks to you about a plea agreement or tells you about one as if they're telling you you have to do that. Ultimately, it is your choice, and you can get advice from your attorney regarding what might be your best option. So that's kind of in a nutshell what you should be considering when talking about whether to plead or go to trial.